Hello, everyone, and welcome to a GI Huddle news interview with Senator Joseph Addabbo of New York, who's here to speak to us about the possibility of mobile sports wagering following the governor's comments in the state. Hi, Senator. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
It's no problem at all. Obviously, there's been some breaking news this week, the governor's comments in New York. And we know you've been a campaigner for mobile sports betting in New York for a long time. So we were keen to get you on board. And if you could just start by sort of giving us your initial reaction to what he said.
When he made the statement, it was quite early in the morning here in New York, and we were quite happy with the statement that the governor embraced mobile sports betting, which I appreciate, and I agree with him on that point. But then the roller coaster started because he basically proposed a structure for mobile sports betting in New York that I think at this point we differ with. So we now will start, negotiating with the governor's office to find, or I guess build off that common ground where we want to do mobile sports betting in New York, but how do we do it? That's where the negotiations start.
Sure. Can you kind of tell us maybe a bit about the details and ins and outs of maybe what he's proposed and where maybe you differ?
I wish I could talk about the details. There are really not many or much. He will unveil his details about mobile sports betting and how he wants to use the lottery division in New York, not only in his State of the State this coming Monday, but also during his executive budget, which comes out January 19th. But this one singular entity, the New York Lottery Division, to run everything through there as he's proposing, with basically one provider, one sports provider, to me at this point is problematic. Our bill, myself and Assemblymember Gary Pretlow in the Assembly, we reintroduced our bill, and basically we're using multiple skins in helping our gaming sites because, quite frankly, we have an opportunity here in New York. It's not about just doing mobile sports betting, but it's about revenue that we certainly need after the pandemic. But it's about creating jobs, and our bill, we feel, creates jobs throughout New York State. We have 3.8 million people who applied for unemployment, so we know that there are people looking for jobs out there, and our economics are suffering. So there lies one of the biggest differences. Our bill and our mechanism for mobile sports betting would create jobs.
Sure. But I guess after his most recent comments, are you in more of a positive kind of mind frame about the possibility of it coming than obviously previously?
Yes, the short answer is yes. That ball is moving ever so closely to the goal line. I always said for New York mobile sports betting, it's not a question of if, but a question of when. It will happen. And now I am optimistic it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, that's definitely a kind of attitude that's been shared by executives in the industry as well, and people we've spoken to. But a question I'd like to ask is, do you think if it wasn't for this COVID-19 pandemic, do you think perhaps the governor may have still been a little bit more towards his old stance, and that actually it's kind of the need for revenue has maybe made him think, well, it's no longer a case of principle, I kind of have to go for this?
I thought New York should have been part of the mobile, let's say sports betting, right after our U.S. Supreme Court said that states other than Nevada could enter into the arena of sports betting. And I thought we should have been out front. New York is usually out front in terms of policy, and other states look at us and know what we're doing. And we find ourselves in a very strange situation where we're actually outside looking in. I've said that we're that car in the right lane with three wheels limping along, and there's other cars like New Jersey speeding by us, and it's an odd position for New York to be in. So I really think we're playing catch up here. I think we should have done sports betting, mobile sports betting, back 2019. But let's go forward, and I'm hopeful, whether it be because of the pandemic and the economic situation we find ourselves in, or otherwise, the bottom line is let's move forward and do mobile sports betting in New York.
Totally, yeah. I mean, New Jersey is a key point to raise there because obviously a neighboring state and just doing so well with sports betting revenue. How much of a factor do you think that kind of the government looking at those numbers and figures was in thinking, we really can't go without this anymore?
Oh, a big factor, I believe, especially in the pandemic when you want your residents to stay in the state safely and not travel to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut. So you want people to stay safe. But, a 2019 report comes out and says that $836 million, I believe, or $837 million goes from New York to New Jersey. because they're doing like 90% mobile sports betting at this point, and they are doing it very well and very successfully. And that's our money going there. So that's our revenue going to New Jersey. That's our educational funds going to New Jersey. That's our jobs basically going to New Jersey. So yeah, I think that's part of it. We also have a very large illegal market here in New York. And we, basically between the New Jersey money and lost and the illegal market money lost, we're losing about $1 billion a year, in my estimation. And we can debate the numbers with the administration. The fact is, Jersey is taking our money at this point. And New York, we want to keep our money. We want to keep our jobs here. So I think it's, again, time to do mobile sports betting.
On that point, that kind of reflects some of the comments that the governor actually made this week. But is it perhaps a little frustrating to you that the way it reads to me is proponents of mobile sports betting like yourself had been kind of saying this thing 2-3 years ago. And as you say, you believe it should have happened as soon as PASPA was overturned. Is it frustrating that you kind of were making these points and now the governor's kind of, it's almost as though, yeah, you were actually right all along kind of thing, or is that maybe a bit unfair on him?
A little frustrating? Let's go with a lot. It is frustrating, but I'm an optimistic person. I like to move forward. And so I'm not going to go over with the past. Yes, it's what we've been saying, and basically just using facts and figures. We don't have to theorize. We don't have to elaborate. It's all there. Facts and figures, how much money we could make as New York State, how much money we lose to other states and illegally. So it is frustrating, but like I said, let's move forward. I'll be optimistic that we do it this year.
Sure, yeah. And perhaps in his defense, one point is obviously responsible gambling. At the moment, we're doing a problem gambling series, and recently Keith White, the executive director of the National Council on Problem Gambling, he said that the US is a little bit behind the UK, or maybe not a little bit, maybe a little bit more than that, in fact, when it comes to responsible gambling. What can kind of New York do to ensure that while you're capitalizing on this revenue, the responsible gambling measures are there to protect problem gamblers?
We can build upon the successful programs we already have. Our New York Gaming Commission has been given accolades and awards nationally for its job in addressing the gaming addiction. And that's great. We appreciate that and in their efforts. But in our bill, in the Senate and the Assembly bill for mobile sports betting, we actually create new revenue as a fraction of a percentage from our handle from the mobile sports betting. We actually create new revenue, not only for gaming addiction, but pre-addiction. Education to stop someone from having an addiction or preventing it. Also in our bill are safeguards. For instance, if a bettor goes above a certain threshold on a monthly basis, that account is frozen and that person is contacted to just make sure everything is okay. There are safeguards in the bill that we do address the addiction issue, which is a priority for me, and why those that are advocates against the addiction issue actually sort of embrace our bill, because it does create additional funds and these programs. The governor was kind of silent, in the initial response or the initial proposal that he laid out. He's actually kind of silent on the addiction issue. So there lies, one of the topics we need to negotiate going forward. Mm-hmm,
yeah, and you mentioned kind of hopefully this year. In terms of a time frame, obviously there's a lot of factors. There's the pandemic. There's these things take time anyway. What kind of time frame are you hopeful of? Specifically speaking.
Yeah, I wanted tomorrow, basically. I wanted, I was hopeful that we could do a revenue package that would have included not only the mobile sports betting, but activation of the downstate gaming licenses in New York as a way of raising about $1 billion in a revenue package before the budget. It does not seem that way. It does seem the time frame seems to be that it'll be part of our budget, which gets approved in April. So from now until April, the governor's budget proposal comes out January 19th, and then that starts the negotiations. So you'll see this issue of mobile sports betting evolve throughout the months of January, February, March, leading up to an April budget.
So with April being the key month, and as you mentioned, the short-term months, what are the very next steps for you guys kind of advocating it, but for the state as a whole?
It is about negotiating with the governor, the pros and cons of his plan, and obviously how to not only raise revenue for New York, but also create jobs, increase educational funding, address the addiction issue. And that negotiation will go on. And then after April, to your point, when you do mobile sports betting, it's not a light switch and you flick it on and all these hundreds of millions of dollars come rolling in. It's going to take some time. And unfortunately, we would have missed the Super Bowl. We would have missed March Madness, two very large sporting events that bettors like to do mobile sports betting with. So we're going to miss out on those. But post-April, should we be able to pass mobile sports betting, I would hope in the next couple of months after that, we can implement it and get it up and running in New York.
Well, you know, as kind of members of the gambling industry, we certainly hope that's the case, and we certainly hope everything can go as smoothly as possible. And you know, obviously, like you say, it's frustrating for yourself that it hasn't happened yet. But you know, this is quite a big step, I think, with the government's latest comments.
It is. You know, we've overcome a lot of hurdles. You know, in New York, it's quite different. This is not Governor Murphy from New Jersey. The governor, I give him a lot of credit, has taken iGaming, you know, online poker, online roulette. Those numbers are up over 100% from last year. People in the pandemic want to stay home, or they're not crazy about going into a large casino place at this point. So mobile is the way to go, and it's growing nationally. So hopefully New York can, again, enter that arena with mobile sports betting and get out of that right lane and get into that left lane and, you know, speed by, actually going past New Jersey at some point. But we have a lot of work to do. And so certainly I look forward to working with the governor's office on the issue.
Well, we wish you the best of luck with that, because as we all know, 2020 was not the best of years. So hopefully for at least sports betting in New York, 2021 can offer some hope and some positivity.
There's a hope across a wide spectrum of issues, certainly health-wise, and certainly 2021 has to be a much better year than 2020. But in terms of gaming and the industry, we have an opportunity here. And I hope the gaming industry sees it that way. We have an opportunity in New York with mobile sports betting. And I hope we take advantage of that opportunity and really maximize our potential here. So thank you very much again for the opportunity to speak.
No problem, Jan. Thank you very much for joining us and for your insight and analysis, Senator.
My pleasure. Have a great year. Happy and healthy New Year.
And you too.
Thank you.